Last week, you'll recall, we covered with David Sirota how Elizabeth Warren had fully abandoned Medicare for all now that she's sort of like in the running to be Biden's VP, which I don't really believe that she's actually in the running, but she thinks she's in the running. Now we have another abandonment of supposedly core principles by Elizabeth Warren. This is from the New York Times. Warren will be hosting a high-dollar fundraising event for Joe Biden on June 15th. Saagar, you'll recall that Warren made a big deal out of not doing call time and calling her low-dollar donors and doing the selfie lines instead, and made corruption a central plank of her presidential platform.
Yeah, this was always a canard because Warren, who was this corruption candidate for her Senate race, remember this. I mean, this is, we have to go all the way back to the primary, but we covered it significantly, raised, I think, what was it, $10 million for her Senate fund with plenty of big money fundraiser. And it was only when she was running for president did she say that she was going to swear that off after transferring the cash from her campaign account to her presidential election fund. And now...
And not only that, but also was like, and once the primary's over, I'm going to get back to it.
And even said, once the primary's over, if the DNC wants to hold, and I'm the nominee, if the DNC wants to hold big money fundraisers, I will participate in those, just not necessarily for my own campaign. So all the caveats, all of the stepping away from this was there from the very beginning. Oh, and shocker, it turns out that she's quite disingenuous whenever it comes to these things, and is debasing her core, if there were ever core values, for what she believed in order to become vice president. I have always said, have always maintained, all of her economic heterodoxy, progressivism, whatever you want to call it, has always been a canard, or has been now for a long time, since she wrote an amazing book, The Two-Income Trap.
Yeah, who knows, right? Like, I think she really, she did that research that obviously motivated her step into public life, but it doesn't matter what you believe if you're not going to stand up for your beliefs.
Well,
who cares what your core values are deep down if they're hidden and they never actually impact, those who are in power and have the ability to change these things. Just remembering back, I almost wish we pulled aside of how hard she went after Pete for the wine cave thing. She was the one who really landed the blows there very effectively. And then you look at this and you're like, come on, I'm not giving Pete a pass here. But obviously you look in retrospect and you're like, this was very hollow from the start. It's also embarrassing because she's jumping through all these hoops to try to audition for Biden's VP, going through all these steps to show I'm not really I promise your donors will be fine. I don't want Medicare for, let's just expand the Affordable Care Act and big money's great. What is it? Corruption? That's not a problem. No issue here. It kind of reminds me of, remember when Mitt Romney was auditioning for the Trump administration and they took that picture of him at the dinner and he looked so sort of shame-faced. It's the same elaborate fealty demonstrations that various people went through to try to get into Trump's good graces after the primary. It sort of recalls that moment in history for me.
Yeah, it certainly does. And you can see how, and as you always point out, maybe she'll be the VP, I doubt it. But as you always point out, you can give these people everything and they still will give you nothing because you had the audacity, the temerity to say, hey, maybe this whole system is kind of messed up. If you even utter those words, even if you play ball with them, they're not willing to accept you. So if you're gonna hold these positions, then you should probably actually act upon them, because if you don't, you're just gonna lose on both sides.
Yeah, your principles are meaningless if you don't stick to them when it counts.
Yeah.
It's the bottom line here. More rising for you after this.